Hi all, it's just Karen. I am flying solo on this one because nobody watched these ones with me. I think I mentioned a while ago talking about these movies that I couldn't wait to watch them. Watched them a while back, so I'm hoping I remember enough with them, but I'm going to review it together because it's a trilogy. But it's the film Fear Street trilogy that was released on Netflix back in July of 2021. Um, they are based on books that our author R.L. Stein wrote. I actually bought the book. Well, it's a trilogy of books, I believe, that it's kind of based off of. But actually, I'm finding I did start rereading it. I read it years ago, but I'm thinking some of the characters have changed up a little bit. So it was broken down, like I said, into three movies. The first one was Fear Street, 1994. Then it was the second one that was released, and these were each released a week apart in July 2021. It was Fear Street, I think 1977. I could be wrong on the date, it could be 1978, but 77, 78. And then the third one was Fear Street 1666, but the third one actually traces back to 1994. So, like I said, I'm going to kind of talk about all three of them together. I'm going to say up front, I thought these movies were great. I don't know if it's part of it is because I kind of read some of the Fear Street series growing up and, really enjoyed it. It's not based on, I know R.L. Stein has written a ton of movies, ton of books based around the Fear Street. So if you like the Fear Street series, which is different things, you have what I believe this book series is based on, which is, was it The Betrayal and something? I can't remember all of it. But then you also have the Goosebumps and some other things. He's also written at least one adult novel that I'm aware of called Superstition, which is a very good book. I would love to see that made into a movie because it's a very interesting read. I've read it multiple times. So what it comes down to with this is there's a city that's basically cursed. I'm trying to remember because there's the one city and then there's the other city that's kind of um, I think it's what Shadyville and hold on, I'm gonna see if it says something on here. Yeah, no, Shady Side. I'm sorry. Um, Shady Side is basically like this town apparently has a dark cloud curse over it. It's been that way for centuries for some reason. And then there's this basically a rival town. I don't know if it says it on here, but for some reason they seem to have it super good, and it's very, very confusing. But anyways, what it starts out, oh, it's Fear Street Part 2 78. I'm just looking on Wiki. So basically what happens with the 1994 one, it starts out, and I was a little confused with this at first, but it's kind of showing these couple people at the mall closing up that work at the mall. And then all of a sudden this killer shows up in a like skeleton outfit and starts killing people. And here it turns out it was one of the other characters you kind of see early on, but he eventually gets killed as well. So we go in and meet some of our main characters, which I can't remember all the names, because like I said, it's been a while since I watched this. One thing I will say with these movies is these are characters you root for. I loved all the characters in this movie. But Dina, I believe, is the one main character throughout the series. I'm going to try to get back over here. And she's kind of talking with a couple of her friends. They're in the high school, like she's in the band, her one friend's a cheerleader, and her other friend's just around. I don't think he's in sports or anything, but those two friends kind of get into selling drugs on the side. And she's like, oh my God, you're going to get into trouble. Well, Dina's like, here, I'm not going to the game tonight. She had this box. She goes, take it and give it to Sam. And they're like, you're going. So eventually they end up going to the game in the rival city. And, the sheriff over there, Sheriff Good, he was not good. I'll give you that hint. is kind of talking, we need to come together. We need, with all this, that, and the other thing. Of course, there's such a rivalry, a fight breaks out. But here it turns out that Dina and the Sam she was talking about is her ex-girlfriend. That kind of caught me off guard, but I thought that was an interesting plot twist. But what happened is Sam moved to this rival town and she's trying to play straight, and her and Dina have like an argument over everything. But anyways, when the Shady Side bus is returning back to their city, Sam's boyfriend and his friend are like tailing them in the car. Something ends up happening. They end up wrecking the car. And when Sam gets out of the car, she's bleeding. And here what happens is she comes across Sarah Fear's grave because her blood ends up interacting with everything. And what happens is this ends up making her a target for Sarah's minions. So it kind of starts going through with the other three characters, Dina and her two friends. They start seeing this person that's dressed in like a skeleton outfit, like the killer from early on, and they think it's Sam's boyfriend messing with them. And so eventually Dina goes to the hospital, basically tells Sam and her boyfriend to stop fucking with them. But then what happens is the killer that they thought was him shows up and kills the boyfriend. So now they're all kinds of confused. So they go and try to escape the hospital, and this killer that has killed a bunch of other staff in the hospital as well. And here, I can't remember who lifts the mask up. It's the dead kid from early on. So they're like, wait, no, this is not making any sense. What the heck is going on? So eventually, they end up talking to the sheriff, Sheriff Good, and they're like telling him like, no, it was this dude. And he's like, it can't be. He is dead. And they're like, no, no, it's him. It's him. And they're like, you guys are just, whatever. You guys are all just crazy. You're just upset and everything. So what ends up happening is the killer continues to chase Sam. So Dina and the friends are trying to protect her, but then they keep going back and forth, like, oh, we'll just sacrifice her. This will get the killer off our backs, and that'll be it. Well, then here in the middle of all this, oh, Dina's younger brother, I forgot to mention him because I love him. Um, he's kind of into like studying like the whole like why is this happening and trying to figure out the curse and everything. And of course, 1994, early days of internet, he's online chatting with this person who goes by the Queen of Darkness, and they're trying to, decipher what's going on. Well, anyways, he kind of starts pulling like past histories, past victims, past killers. He's trying to put everything together. So at one point, when they're back at the school, I believe it is, he discussed about this article from 1978 about this one person that was being targeted by a killer, but then she died, but she was brought back, and it said that she survived. So they're like, oh, okay, so basically all we have to do is kill Sam and bring her back, thinking easy problem solved. So for some reason, because they're just like, okay, yeah, whatever. So they try to reach out to this person. Her name, I believe, is Christine. It says C something, but they left a message, couldn't reach out to her. So they go to the supermarket. I can't remember if one of the characters works there and tries to set up all these traps because at this point there's other killers chasing them. And they're figuring out, okay, for some reason, Fear is just coming after Sam because she saw something she shouldn't have. Because at one point, too, they found that her bones were disturbed, so they try to put her back at peace, and it doesn't work. And I mean, like I said, a lot of supernatural aspect to this, but it's great. So, anyways, they go to the supermarket, try to set everything up. They're gonna draw the killers in, take them out, kill Sarah, bring her back, and everything's going to be solved. Needless to say, it does not work out that way. There is probably one of the coolest kill scenes ever, where one of the characters' head gets shoved through a bread slicer. And I can honestly say that is not something I have ever seen done before. It's one of the friends of Dina, and then the male friend there, he ends up getting attacked by the camp killer that we'll talk more about in 1978 one. So, they're trying to lure, the multiple killers around that are being sent by Sarah Fear. So Dina basically drowns Sam in the lobster tank till she dies. And then they did a cocktail of pills to revive her, and CPR, which they do, and they figure everything is, they solved the problem even though they lost two of their friends, which I was very heartbroken over these characters being killed off. So it goes back that Sheriff Good shows up, and um, he's trying to get the true story out of Dina, and Dina's like, "You're not going to believe me anyways." And Sheriff's like, "Well, you have to understand, it's going to go down that your friends were basically, drug dealers, and they did this all." And Dina's like, "It's not going to matter anyways." So, kind of getting to the ending with the first film, you see Sheriff Good going to a house, writing on a piece of paper stating it's happening again, and he slides it in the mail slot. Sam, Dina, and Dina's brother are back at the house. Sam and Dina are kind of hanging out. Dina goes to answer the phone, and it ends up being this Christine or whatever, whoever survived from 1978. And Dina kind of gets shitty with her, and she's like, "Oh yeah, well thanks for the call after the fact, and um, we figured it all out." And she goes, "Did you?" And Sam kind of says what they did, and they're like, "No, Sam knows too much. Sarah will still be after her." Well, here while Dina's on the phone, Sam comes in, and basically Sam has now become possessed to be the next killer and stabs Dina. So that's kind of where everything ends. Like they're just kind of like, okay, we thought we figured this out. What is going on? And it's kind of at that point, you don't know what's going on at that moment. So, like I said, these movies were each released a week apart. Like I said, I just watched them within the past few months. So the next one, for Fear Street 1978, it kind of starts at 1994, kind of gives you a rehash. But it starts with Dina and her brother meeting up with, I think Christine is her name. I can't remember the person that survived the 1978 massacre. And basically, she is like living in fear constantly. She has clock alarms set to do things at certain times of the day and night, making sure she's locking windows, feeding her dog. It's literally like this is ruling this person's life. Anyways, Dina and her brother basically break into her house and kind of get the whole story. So, like I said, I believe her name's Christine. I can't remember exactly, but it turns out it's not the person they thought it was. But it kind of goes over, okay, there was, this camp with the two rival cities that went to, there were some teens that led the camp, younger campers there and everything. And basically they would have games, camping stuff, and everything else. Well, there's this one younger character named Ziggy who just doesn't want to be there. So she's constantly trying to do stuff to get kicked out. And her older sister is one of the counselors who's getting upset because she's like, does she not understand? If she gets kicked out, I have to go home because mom has to work. Dad's gone. That's the big thing, like with Shady side, is, a lot of families are decimated, divorce, death, everything else. There's like a lot of, stuff like that going on. It's like one of those places everything could go wrong goes wrong. But Ziggy's older sister, she's trying so hard to be Little Miss Perfect, and she's trying. Her goal is to save money for college, and she wants to get out of Shady Side. She has a boyfriend there, and her boyfriend's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. She won't get kicked out. They won't do that." So on and so forth. But there's some other random counselors there, and there's another counselor that apparently Ziggy's older sister and her used to be friends, but she kind of started becoming like a druggie and a space head and everything else. So they're trying, they've kind of talked about some things, the legend of Sarah Fear and everything's still well known and discussed during all this. But there's a nurse at the camp, and apparently her daughter, Ruby, I can't remember her last name, was a killer back in the 50s. So it kind of really messed this mother up, the nurse, and she's been trying to break the curse since then, like becoming totally obsessed with it. So anyways, we have Ziggy's older sister and her boyfriend, and I can't remember if they're in the mess hall or where they're at. All of a sudden, the nurse shows up with a knife and goes after the boyfriend, saying, "I saw your name on the wall. I have to kill you." We're all like, okay. I'm like sitting there like, what the heck is this woman talking about? So they actually stop the nurse from harming the boyfriend. The nurse ends up getting taken away to a mental institution. So they're actually, Ziggy's sister and the boyfriend they go into the nurse's station trying to figure out what's going on, and they find the nurse's notebook where she kept like all this documentation about stuff, research she was doing, which she actually had a decent amount of research for 1978. And like the other counselor and her boyfriend show up, the like drugged out, spaced out ones, and they're like, "Oh, you're just trying to steal drugs," and all that. Well, when they find out what they're doing, they're like, "Oh, we're going to take this and let's go explore," because it's somehow the nurse noted about finding Sarah's bones, and I can't remember what her game plan was. I kept joking because I watched Supernatural. I'm like, you get the bones, you salt and burn them and solve the problem, but I don't think that's what they were going to do. So they start going on trying to look in these like catacombs and tunnels below the camp, trying to figure out, what the nurse was doing. Meanwhile, overall at the camp, they're starting color wars, which is basically kind of like a steal the flag. So it's supposed to be Shady Side versus the other city. So everything's getting set up for that, even though, Shady Side has not won ever. And their team leads like, yeah, yeah, just go out and have fun. Da da da. Who cares if we win or lose? So we get back to the group there trying to figure out what the nurse was looking for as far as Sarah Fear goes. So they end up finding this area underground with it has this like pit area with some symbolism, and I can't remember if there was blood in it or needed to be blood put in it or if there was a fire. But they look on the wall and there's like all the names of people that have caused mass murder in Shady Side over the years. And Ziggy's sister's boyfriend's name is on the wall. And they're like, oh my God, what does this mean? So while they're trying to figure this out, all of a sudden the boyfriend becomes possessed and starts killing people. So they're all, so Ziggy's sister and the other counselor are like, oh my God, this is great. Sarah Fear's coming after us, through him and everything else. So he just starts going through but he only attacks Sunnyside residents. The other thing I forgot to mention in here is Sheriff Good was a counselor during this time as well. And he also met Ziggy during this time. So they were kind of hanging out a little bit as well. And, he kind of actually really liked Ziggy. So when it came down to the killer was going after certain people, and they found out, because literally the killer would bypass people from the other city and literally just go after the Shady Side residents. And eventually Nick Good, Sheriff Good, got the camp evacuated, but there was still like Ziggy was there, he was there, a couple of the other counselors were there and everything, and they were trying to, corner the killer. So at one point, I'm trying to remember, Nick went off somewhere, and it's just Ziggy, her sister, and this other counselor. They thought they killed the killer, and they're discussing, reviewing the book, and they're like, okay, if we can find, they try to review, okay, if we could find where Sarah's buried, we can end this curse and everything, or and that. But somehow the one counselor, I'm digressing a little bit because this will come out a little bit more in 1666. Sarah's whole body isn't buried together, and what happened is she ended up having to cut her hand off. I'll go into a little bit more detail when I get to 1666. So her hand was in one area, and she was buried in a different area, the rest of her body. So the one counselor actually found her hand while they were underground. So they were kind of thinking, okay, if we can reunite the hand with the rest of her body, everything should be cool. So they figured out on the map where Sarah's body should be. So they decided, okay, we're going to take the hand, do that, and, this should break the curse. What ends up, the one killer isn't dead. She gets killed. So Ziggy and her sister take off. In the middle of all this, Ziggy bled on the hand. She had the visions like Sam did. So now Sarah is sending her killers after Ziggy because she knows too much. So now they're trying to go and find where the body's buried. They go to where they think the body is, dig up, body's not there. So Ziggy's sister starts freaking out because they have all these killers, and I mean, there's multiple killers. They don't even go into detail with all the killers, but like, you got her sister's boyfriend still chasing them. You have, I think Ruby was coming after him, the nurse's daughter. There's a couple other ones. I can't remember all of them because they don't go into all the stories with them. You just kind of hear things here and there. So what happens is, I can't remember if it starts raining at this point or not. The killers basically get to the sisters, and the hand gets dropped in the ground by this tree where they thought Sarah's body was. The killers basically kill Ziggy and her sister. Nick comes upon them afterwards because once the killers do their business, they took Ziggy out, they can go on their way. They're done. They did their thing, so they just disappear. Well, Nick finds where they're at and revives Ziggy. And originally, Dina and her brother thought it was Ziggy's older sister that was revived when it was actually Ziggy. And then, Ziggy's pretty messed up from being attacked and everything, but she is actually revived. But the thing is, she's still not technically free of the curse. And basically, the way it ends is, the police and everything show up. They're talking to Nick, and he basically just goes, yeah, another shady side are doing their shit. And that's and then comes back to 1984, and with Dina and her brother figuring out it's Ziggy, and them kind of talking and just being like, so what do we need to do? And that's kind of where that one finishes up. So then we get into the third and final movie of the trilogy, Fear Street 1666. So we get to finally hear Sarah's story. So this kind of goes back, early world, kind of with the witchcraft trials and everything else. So what's kind of interesting with this one, and I kind of really enjoyed, initially how that all comes about, that you get to see everything that happens here is Dina goes to retrieve Sarah's body, ends up bleeding on the body, and this is how we get to see Sarah's story. So this is basically what has happened to the other people. But what they do, though, is like the other characters that have been in the other movies play characters in this one as well. So what happens is Dina is basically Sarah Fear in this one. As I said, it starts with the 1666. She is basically a farmer's daughter. It's her, her dad, her, and then the one that's been playing her brother, her younger brother. And they're in this early colony, basically, before it was split up between Shadyside and the other place. And the other characters are around. Sam is in this as well, and apparently they were in love back then, which wouldn't have been accepted, obviously. But Sarah is basically being betrothed to a member of the Good family. And he kind of, well, I won't get into that yet. Um, Eventually, though, like ruins start to fall upon the colony. Um, I believe I think it's Sarah's father, I can't remember, pastor, priest of the town, has all the children called to the church, locks himself in, and basically kills all of them. And like nobody can get in until um, the family member Good is able to break down the door, and basically all the children under a certain age are dead. So that really is a real hardship on the town. And then it's like the crops are rotting, animals are dying. It's basically like the town is cursed. So it starts being talk of witchcraft. And there's talk, there's this woman that lives on the outskirts of town who apparently has this book that can bring this on. And when Sarah and them try to go and look at the book again, the book is missing, and the woman who had it is dead. So they know somebody in town obviously killed the woman and has the book and has placed a curse on the town. So they're trying to figure out who it could be. Well, basically, like everyone's kind of turning against each other. Nobody trusts each other. Kind of, if you've done any research, with the Salem witch trials and everything, that's kind of the way things were then. So Sarah eventually goes to the Good family's house because, well, what it comes down to is her and Sam's character, whoever she's playing at that point, it doesn't give me a name on this, are basically both accused of witchcraft. So they're both basically to be tried. I mean, they capture Sarah. No, they didn't capture Sarah. They captured whoever Sam's playing at that point, but Sarah is in hiding. So she goes to see who she's supposed to be betrothed to. And she's exploring through his house and goes down, like, keeps going down and looking. And here in the lower levels of this church is this room with this fire, and it's basically the room that was seen in the camp scene in 1978. And here, the pastor's name was written on the wall. And the good shows up, and Sarah's like, "What is this?" And he's like, "Well, I found a way to bring good fortune, and we deserve good fortune, and you and I can be happy." And here it turns out that he saw Sarah with the other female, and that's so he's kind of jilted and pissed. So basically, he's saying, with this book, we can have a good life. All we have to do is make these sacrifices and everything else. And Sarah's like, she gets upset because her brother was one of the ones that was killed, and like basically telling him he's wrong and what he's doing and everything. So they end up chasing each other through these lower tunnels that we kind of saw in 1978. In the middle of part of this, Sarah gets caught, and actually her hand ends up, I don't think she cuts it off, but I think she ends up pulling and it pulls off. So her one hand is left in this one spot where it's found later. Well, here where she emerges out of the tunnel, it comes out, I can't remember if it's at the school or the church, but it's also like the same area that's in the camp. That's why you kind of, if you watch these together, everything fits. And then Good comes out behind her and says, "I found the witch. I found," he basically turns her over to the mob. So basically what it comes down to at this point is Sarah sacrifices herself for her female partner, basically confesses she goes, "It was just me, it wasn't her, I'm the witch," and everything else. but she kind of places a curse, if I remember correctly. She kind of places, doesn't play, I don't want to say a curse. She just basically looks at Good and says, my story will be told no matter how long it takes, and the truth, something along those lines. So it's not really a curse. It's just more or less like eventually you're going to be found out. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but the truth will come out. And then she's hung. And then what happens is they bury her where under this tree where Ziggy and her sister were originally looking. But what happened is her friends, Sarah's friends, returned later, and they opted to move her to where she was at the beginning of the first movie because they just felt um, her body wasn't going to be, excuse me, respected and left alone there. So that's kind of where it's kind of like a false grave is what it comes down to. So after all that, Dina comes back to her senses and it's like, I know what's going on. She knew the story. So we learn it isn't Sarah the cursed shady side, it's the good family. And it's the good family that's sending the killers after the people that are learning Sarah's story. So what happens is Dina kind of fills everybody in. Meanwhile, Sam's been like tied up, still possessed during all this. Because there's just a real funny part, if I remember to tell you later on, because I just busted up laughing. But anyways, between Dina, Ziggy, her, Dina's brother, there's another guy. He works at the mall, but he's also like spray can tattoo, not tattoo artist, but spray can artist who kind of helps them out. So they develop this plan to trap Sheriff Good and expose him. And what it is killers, when they're sent, they're attracted by scent with the blood. So they do this whole setup at the mall. It's crazy to watch. But I think part of it, I was laughing because some of the stuff, Dina's like covering herself with a book shield of books. And I swear a couple of the books were by one of my favorite authors I read back then, Christopher Pike. I mean, I got to watch it again just to see. But it was just like, oh my God, this is so crazy. So they try to do this whole thing to get the killer to come and try to get Sheriff Good to show up as well so they can expose them. And like I said, Sam's still tied up in the middle of all this. So, anyways, things don't go according to plan, obviously. Um, Ziggy almost gets killed, and that with some stuff. And actually, it's kind of funny at one point when because Dina takes off after Sheriff Good when he tries to escape and hide, and the other three are still in the mall and they're like, what do? We got to keep them here so they don't go after Dina. So they start spraying the killers with the mixture of her blood in the water. So the killers keep going after each other. But the thing is, once they're killed, they still come back. So that it's kind of like a never ending situation because they eventually run out of that solution. But the funny scene is Sam is like tied up in one of the food vending areas. Well, she gets loose, and Dina's brother's like, oh shit, we just lost Sam or something. And I just busted up laughing because he's just so matter of fact about it. But they're like dealing with that, and they're like, we can't really go after her, even though and the reason why Sam is possessed too is Sheriff Good put her name on the wall to be the killer. So she was supposed to go through and make, even though they just had he had a recent sacrifice, but he assigned her to make additional sacrifices. So, anyways, getting back to Dina and Sheriff Good, they're like in these tunnels under the mall and everything, and it kind of leads back to a couple other things. I'm trying to remember everything. The long and short of it, it comes down to the Good family has been making these sacrifices now using Shadyside residents for centuries. And that's why their town has been prospering. So literally, like, that's why they're rich, they get everything. Like, it's not just the Good family, it's their whole town, which I cannot remember the name of it. So eventually comes down, they are able to kill Sheriff Good, which basically eliminates the curse, breaks the curse. And it's so funny at this point because Sam's with Dina, so she's fine after, the curse is broken. And they're in the basement of Sheriff Good's house. They go upstairs and they're kind of looking like he has like luxury items beyond you wouldn't believe, like a family tree there that's amazing. And what it is, and it's explained, is the one that's purpose with continuing the curse is the oldest son. So like he had a good job as a sheriff. His younger brother was like mayor of their town. Like they had everything. Well, the minute they go walking outside, they look across the street and there's this neighbor just backing out, not paying attention. He gets hit by a garbage truck. So it's like, yeah, your good luck just ran out, buddy. And Dina and Sam just kind of stand there like, did that just happen? So at this point, Sarah's story has been told. I believe they reunited her hand with her body, if I'm not mistaken, because they found the hand. The hand was buried at the mall by this tree. Like I said, I know I forgot some details. And everything, so like the curse is broken, Shady side is clean, I guess, basically the way I put it. So it kind of just ends where everyone's kind of, doing their thing. Dina's brother meets who the Queen of Darkness is, and it's so funny. She's this little white girl that's a total geek. I just busted up laughing with that. And then Dina and Sam actually kind of go on a date, and they meet up where Sarah's body is buried, and they anoint her the first resident of Shadyside. And that's kind of the way it ends. I was kind of looking on here, and I mean, I guess they are talking about possibly doing additional movies. So we'll just wait and see. But like I said, I believe this is kind of based on the trilogy I have here that I've kind of been reading. I did read it a long time ago, but I think the characters have shifted a little bit. Like I said, I got to kind of read it a little bit further, but totally worth watching these. I think they're all about 90 or so minutes apiece. I watched the first one and then I watched the second and third one back to back. Feel they're definitely worth it. If you have Netflix, I canceled my Netflix shortly after this, so I don't have it right now. Probably going to be getting it back next month though, because they're doing a series based on Christopher Pike's Midnight Club, and he was one of my favorite authors back in my teenage years. So I want to check that out. But definitely check these out if you haven't. Like I said, I feel the characters are amazing. I feel they did a really good job with the movie over the all three overall. I mean, and you got the supernatural, got some witchcraft stuff and everything, but that's kind of what those books are based on. But that is it. Longer review. Hope you guys don't mind. Spoiler review. I know I probably missed some things. You're gonna be like, you missed this, you missed that. Well, guess what? My memory sucks right now. But anyways, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you know when we post new content once a year. Comment if there's something you want me to check out, talk about, review. I think we're going to be doing a couple more here, and then Sabluda should be coming back. Like I said, he didn't watch these with me. I was flying solo, so you can say hi to my mommy in the background over here. I can't point right. Everything's backwards. So there's my mommy. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.